My pleasure to turn to Georg Prolich and Diana Frota. Diana, why don't we start with you? Tell us what's going on in France and Austria.
Well, thank you for this invitation and for letting me speak about what I do in France for my client. First of all, I want to start with it's not a funny story, but it's still an interesting story. Last year, so not this year, last year, I had a client who was an elderly man, over 80 years old. And we were in France during the third lockdown. So he asked the Supreme Court, why should he be still locked down since he received 2 jabs of vaccination? He was one of the first person in France to receive vaccination. And the answer of the Supreme Court was very surprising. The Supreme Court said to him, well, you have to stay locked down because the vaccine doesn't work. But really? And it went on all the newspaper, at this time in mainstream media in France. But even though this happens, people tend to forget. And this is how amazing it can be. On the 12th of July 2021, so 3 months after that, the French president made the vaccination compulsory through a vaccine pass. So you will ask me, how is it possible to make compulsory something that doesn't work, even though the Supreme Court said it? So in my views, there is 2 answers on that. The first answer is because of the WHO, because all the laws we have in France regarding the pandemics is an implementation of the WHO legislation. So this is the first point. And the second point is the problem of the scientist expert. In France, when we were locked down, the French president appointed a scientific committee, as the WHO has a scientist committee. And we all wonder why, because we have lots of doctors and medical academy in France, but still the president appoints this committee of scientists. And this committee of scientists gives his view about vaccine, about the lockdown, about everything. And we challenge his views, the views of this committee in front of the Supreme Court. But the French Supreme Court said that we cannot challenge it. We cannot challenge this advice, scientists' advice, because, well, they are only advice and they are supposed to have no effect on the life of people. That is what the French Supreme Court said. But we all know this is not true. Everything has a very a tremendous impact on our life. And if you look at the WHO regulation, the Article 48 and 49 of the RSI, I don't know how to translate it. It's a part of the treaty that exists right now that will be changed. But the Article 48 and 49 states that the General Director of the WHO to launch a pandemic or to stop the pandemic has to ask the advice of this emergency scientist committee. And until this scientist committee won't say that the pandemic is over, it's going to be an endless pandemic. And if we have the same system as in France, well, we have the same. It's that we cannot challenge this expert advice. So this is how we end up with a total useless, I would say in French, situation. And that leads also to the fact that people are compelled to take vaccine and they suffer side effects. Because these are the 2 important points that I wish to talk about today. Since we cannot challenge the scientific effects, the scientific advice, we are all suffering of side effects through this vaccination. Especially, I do represent in France 2 groups that have been challenging in the past in front of Supreme Court, but also that have been heard recently through the Senate Committee in France, because the Senate launched an inquiry about side effects. So my clients were invited to speak, and the first of them is a group of pilot, steward, and hostess called the Freedom Flyers, French Freedom Flyers. But we have this initiative also everywhere in the world, in the US, in Canada, in Switzerland, in Australia. Well, lots of pilots and hostess and stewards are gathering together to say that vaccination may cause side effects while flying. We brought to the French Senate Committee testimony of pilot and hostess testifying that some of them suffered side effects of the vaccine while flying, and it caused problem for landing. So what the pilot and the hostess and the steward says is, we don't need to put at risk the safety of our passenger. We can only do a test, not get the vaccine through a test. We will know if the disease can be spread into the flight. But with the vaccine, we know that the vaccine doesn't spread the disease. So the test is better for everyone, and with the test, you don't have side effects that might occur while flying. So this is a more serious approach. This is a practical approach. This is normal to see the best way to ensure safety. And I hope that the French Senate and also the European Court of Human Rights that has been receiving the claim of the pilot will answer and will think about this. And the second group I wish to talk about today, and especially after my London colleague Chapman talked about that. Well, in France we have an initiative of women called Where Is My Period? It's composed of 15,000 of women who are testifying about the fact that now, after getting the jab, well, they don't have their periods anymore, or maybe they are bleeding three times a month, which is totally abnormal. And all these women testified in front of the French Senate, and together with the hostess, because the hostess of the freedom fighters also suffers this kind of side effects. And one of them explained to the French Senate that she was so much bleeding after the jab from her uterus. Even the medication that that is usually given to women, which is called Exacil, didn't stop this bleeding. So in the end, she said to the Senate that she had to choose between a license, a flying license, which is her job, and her uterus. This was because she couldn't be able to fly without the vaccine, without the pass. So in the end, when you have children, when you have to pay to eat, well, it's compulsory for you to choose, and it's not normal that you have to choose between a uterus and between your job. This kind of side effects is a real problem. We have initiative from women coming from Canada, coming from Australia, coming also from other countries. I think with what we heard, this is a real problem, and the French Senate said, in fact, that they are receiving also lots of alert from the women, and they said that the EMA, it's the European Medical Agencies like the CDC, but in Europe, that the EMA has been alerted by the women, but the EMA didn't look at it, shut it down, saying we don't know why women has this kind of problem. Maybe it's stress, maybe it's the stress of the lockdown. So I see people are smiling, but I think the stress is the cause of lots of things if we listen to the expert, because I'm also the lawyer of a little kid who lost his son 5 days after the vaccination. And for this kid, well, they also said to his family that maybe he was stressed. Now we have proof that it's really the vaccine who is responsible of his health state. But stress is not the reason why women have a problem with their period. And most of all, what is very shocking is when the vaccination started, the French Ministry of Health knew about this and said on French national TV, well, ladies, it's not a problem if you don't have your period for 1 month, it will come back next month. Well, we are 6 months, 8 months ahead, and it's then come back. So this is a tremendous problem. And why are we keeping up with this vaccination? It's because we can challenge the expert advice, which are still saying that the benefits outpass the risk, which is, in my point of view, not true for the biggest part of the population. It is the children, the woman who wants to be pregnant, also the men, of course, young men, but maybe I'm not a doctor, but for sure, for the biggest part of the population, the risk is greater than the benefit, and the problem is how will we find a way to challenge this expert advice? This is a question also that for my learned friend, but really, and I will maybe close it by French. We say in French, for the one who speaks French, l'expertise, c'est l'incompétence qui s'avoue, déléguée à l'incompétence qui s'ignore. L'incompétence qui s'avoue, c'est celle de nos politiques qui prennent ce genre de décision, et l'incompétence qui s'ignore, c'est celle des experts. So maybe I will translate. Expertise is self-confessed ignorance, the one of our politics, delegating to unknowing ignorance, which is the one of some experts that are still keeping on this vaccination. And I hope all together we will find a way to stop this, legally legal decision that because we need the justice to be restored in our country.
For this very impressive country report from France, I find it very remarkable that the French Senate has allowed such presentation to happen and that you were part of it. Let me ask you one question. Did you have the impression that the senators were impressed? Did they show some reactions, or did they put up the face of total denial?
Well, for the biggest part, they show a face of denial, but they take into account the women's problem. Two senators, women senators, said at the French Senate that Europe should reopen the case and look more into this problem. Two of them were shocked, and I hope they said that this is a big problem and they will keep on inquiring. So we are hoping for something through this committee. We're still crossing fingers, and I think this is a very big alert, and this is an alert for the women that we will see everywhere in the world.
Thank you very much, Ian Fortin, and thank you very much to her for the great work she's doing in France.